Good day, everyone. On behalf of my group, allow me to present to you first those person behind this very successful and beautiful presentation. We have Kumuyog Karen Joy, Maret Princess Joy, Pilios Carol K, Barrett Mary Jane, and yours truly. And also, I would love and glad to welcome you virtually, my dear listeners. For today's discussion, I will be your facilitator, and we will be discussing about one of the macro skill, which is the listening skill. But before we proceed on the formal discussion, let me first present to you the objectives, for it serve and for us to be guided as we go along with the discussion. And let me read for you. At the end of the discussion, you, my dear listeners, are expected to identify the two categories of listening strategy, appreciate the importance of listening by analyzing short text listened to, and apply the two strategies by understanding what has listened to and examine listening text. Now moving on to our topic. First, we have noticed that these are our 4 macro skills and rated according to their essentials. However, listening got a 45% among the rest. Although they are all macro skills they are all essentials. But why listening got a 45%? Since listening is a crucial skill and is more essential skill used to communicate. And let us first define what is listening. Listening is a complex of operation and integrating the distinct components of perception and linguistic knowledge. It mentioned there the linguistic knowledge. What is linguistic? As we have learned from our previous discussion, linguistic is the scientific study of knowledge, in which it focuses on the properties of particular language as well as the characteristic of language in general. Linguistic is something to do with in the listening, because listening is the process of decoding the messages relating to what people hear and know already. And listening leads to learning and a skill that lets the sound you hear go through your brain to process the meaning of it. As I have said a while back, the listening is a skill in which you are to decode the sound or message you have heard and come up with a good or meaningful response through the process given by your brain. In listening, receiving language through the ears and involves identifying the sound of speech and processing them into words and sentences. If you are an effective listener, you must possess paying attention, or shall I say, give the speaker your undivided attention and talk with them more clearly and understanding. Because an effective listening can help you become a better speaker and for you to become a better student. Because listening is the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process. And with that, I hope I made myself clear with the definition of listening. Moving on, listening is an essential ingredient of a wide range of work activities, such as listening to problems, gathering information, dealing with inquiries, attending meetings, establishing needs, and so on. Now, let's differentiate hearing to listening. Hearing is an involuntary act where you simply receive vibration through your ears, and it's one of the 5 senses, and it just happens all the time, whether we like it or not, unless we have a hearing problem. Also, hearing simply happens. While on the other side, listening uses our ears to receive individual sounds and use our brain to convert these into message that means something to us. Listening requires concentration so that your brain processes meaning from words and sentences. These two, the hearing and listening, are merely different, my dear listener. However, take note of this, that the biggest similarity of these two, the hearing and listening, is that both are required to use our ears. But hearing, from the given definition in the presentation, it is an act where you simply receiving vibration, which means you are only hearing sound waves through your ears and it only uses your sense. In short, when you do hearing, my dear listener, it is an act of accidental, involuntary, and effortless. And take note of that. That hearing is an act of accidental, involuntary, and effortless. And in contrast, in listening, you have to exert your effort. You have to exert your energy in communicating and in listening as well. As like you are doing at this very moment, of which you are exerting your effort in listening to my discussion and lending your time with me. And you are analyzing what I am talking here. And that means a lot for me and I appreciate it so much. And with that, you are becoming a good listener. If you are exerting your effort in listening and understanding what I am talking here. Going back, for you to become effective in this so-called interaction, you have to utilize the listening one, the listening skill, and diminish the hearing. Because in listening, my dear listener, what matters is to pay attention to sound with thoughtful understanding. Did you get it, my dear student? I repeat that in listening, what matters is to pay attention to sound with thoughtful understanding. I hope you now differentiate hearing to listening. Moving on, list the listening strategies. These are techniques which contribute directly to the comprehension and recall of a listening input. As I stated a while back, that listening requires effort to understand, analyze, and comprehend thought or ideas. Listening strategies may depend on the following factors: the topic, type of listening materials to be used, and the purpose of listening. Listening strategies divided into two: the top-down and the bottom-up. Let's now differentiate these two, the top-down and the bottom-up. Top-down says here that it's a listener-based strategy and the listener uses background knowledge to make sense of what she or he is listening to. In top-down, the listener already knows a fair amount of information about the topic and he or she is able to relate a story or information into a prior knowledge. While on the other side, the bottom up, it says here that it's a text-based strategy and this is less use of background knowledge and also relies on the language in the message that creates the meaning. So the bottom up is the listener relies on the language in the message that creates the meaning like sounds, words, and grammar. So the bottom line here is top-down uses a background for the listeners, or shall I say the listener uses background, while in bottom-up, less use of background. So that is the differences of the strategies in listening, the top-down and bottom-up. Now, let's moving on to the example of top-down and bottom-up. And here are the examples of top-down: summarizing, listening for main ideas, making prediction, and for additional input or for additional examples for top-down are taking notes or taking down notes and drawing inferences. While on the other, the bottom-up, these are the examples: recognizing cognates, listening for specific details, and recognizing word sound. Now, going back to the definition of top-down. In top-down, the listener already knows a fair amount of information about the topic, while on the bottom-up, listener relies on the language in the message. And let's proceed to this sentence. You, my dear listeners, should try this. Identify if it is bottom-up or top-down. Let's take a look on the example number 1. Please listen carefully. I know you are all good listener. So example number 1 goes this way. Your friend calls to invite you to a party at her house on Sunday. As you've never been to her house before, she gives you directions. You listen carefully and make notes. Again, I will repeat the example 1 and please identify if it is bottom up or top down. Your friend calls to invite you to a party at her house on Sunday. As you have never been to her house before, she gives you directions. You listen carefully and make notes. If your answer is bottom up, then you are correct. I commend you with your correct answer. The answer on the number 1 example is bottom up. While on number 2, you listen well as your teacher shared with you how she spent her holiday break. I repeat, you listened well as your teacher shared with you how she spent her holiday break. If your answer is top down, then you are correct. And I hope you are now learn and differentiate the hearing to listening, and also the strategies. You are now differentiate the bottom up to the top down. And with that, I have here I prepared here an activity for you, but this activity will serve as your assignment. If you have the queries, concerns, and suggestions, you may tap me or just comment below. Thank you for participating and for your time in listening. I hope you learn a lot from this discussion. Thank you and God bless.